With the release of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, the Phase 4 of Marvel Cinematic Universe has come to its end. And we all know this, the MCU has become the staple of cinema today. Every film franchise in the world is trying to mimic the formula that Disney and Marvel have created with the MCU. But not everyone is Kevin Feige. He is the one in charge of Marvel and its movies. He and his team plan out every movie, and of course, we can never forget how Avengers Infinity War and Endgame felt like the accumulation of what was essentially 10-11 years of storytelling, 20 plus movies. The overarching story finally came to an end with Avengers Endgame. But since the beginning of Phase 4 and the end of Avengers Endgame, people have noticed the lack of quality that has been shown with Phase 4. In addition to that, there has been an overload of content in Phase 4 in just a short amount of time. We got so many movies and so many TV shows, each episode being over an hour long, and honestly speaking, it begs the question that everyone's been asking, what happened to the MCU? Let's talk about that. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel right down there so you don't miss out on the releases of our future movies and short films, as well as videos of me talking about movies. Also, make sure you watch our award-winning second feature-length film, The Hollywood Dream. You can click right there on the top corner to watch it right now. But yeah, let's get started. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the lead up to Endgame, but it has to be studied in film schools and stuff. The Infinity War saga was an 11-year, 23-film story, pretty much. And yeah, you can tell, some of the movies in the first 3 phases of the MCU have not been particularly good or even that crucial to the overarching story, but the point is that you could tell when watching the movies in the first 3 phases how they were taking their time and developing each character and then adding elements that would later come into play when Infinity War and Endgame were coming out, you know what I mean? And on top of that, they knew that they couldn't waste screen time with any of the movies that they were putting out at the time. Each movie had something to it that you needed to know. But Phase 4 for some reason felt different. The first movie in Phase 4 is Black Widow, and it's a prequel story. It takes place after Captain America Civil War and before Avengers Infinity War. There was no real reason to have this movie released when it got released. It should have been released after Civil War was released or in Phase 1 of the MCU. But that's not really what happened. This movie was made way too late. And that's why I don't really consider it part of Phase 4, even though Marvel considers it as part of Phase 4. Anyway, Black Widow is just a confusing movie. It's only there to establish the Thunderbolts, with the, what's the guy's name? The Russian guy, cannot remember his name. And also Florence Pugh's character as Black Widow. So those were the only 2 main reasons for this movie to exist. Those are characters that could have been introduced in Phase 3 for Phase 4, you know what I mean? Or on top of that, you could have found a way to incorporate Florence Pugh's Black Widow in Avengers Endgame, you know what I mean? There was a more creative way of doing that, but they made a Black Widow movie as the first movie in Phase 4 that has nothing to do with Phase 4, except introduce a character that isn't really that important yet. Even now, all she's done is been in Hawkeye. And let's talk about Eternals, because this was an interesting movie that was kind of disappointing. I personally did not like Eternals. It's one of those movies that looks pretty, but it's not really interesting. This is, again, one of those movies that should have been released in Phase 3, but it got released way too late. The main question when Eternals was coming out was that, where were these people when Thanos was out here, you know what I mean? The only explanation was that, oh yeah, we cannot interfere with human conflicts. But then the conflict that they interfere with is a human conflict. But yeah, Eternals is also something that has a cliffhanger ending, and we don't even know if there's going to be a direct sequel. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a sequel, but no one is really excited about a sequel. And we don't even know how the Eternals will play into the whole multiverse saga. And that's kind of my point with Phase 4, is that it feels so inconsistent, because if you look at Phase 1 and Phase 2 and Phase 3, each movies that were releasing made you excited about the next one, as well as kind of giving you an idea of like, oh, okay, I see where they're going with this, you know what I mean? But for Phase 4, it just feels, it's lacking that excitement. The only exciting thing about Phase 4 is the introduction of Kang and the multiverse idea, but that's also stuff that won't be paid off until the next Avengers movie, which comes out in Phase 5, end of Phase 5 or Phase 6. If you run down the movie releases, Shang-Chi was a very good movie, and it's a movie that contained itself. It's all about Shang-Chi. I love that movie. And then, of course, you had Spider-Man No Way Home, which was, people were excited about that because of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. And yeah, the multiverse idea finally being embraced. But then you had Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which in one hand does make people excited about, oh, now we're going to see different characters from different universes coming together. But at the same time, that falls flat on his face after that hypeness wears off, you know what I mean? And then you had Thor and Love and Thunder, which, again, there should not have been a reason why a Thor movie was made, because Thor has become a legacy character. Like, you know, he had his trilogy over there. As predictable as it is, let's pass the mantle, pass the hammer down to the next generation. You can watch Phase 4, and so far you can skip 3 or 4 movies. Shang-Chi, you have to watch. Spider-Man, you have to watch. You can kind of skip Doctor Strange if you feel like it. Thor, you can skip. You know, Black Widow, Eternals, you can skip those. So you see what the point I'm trying to make? Let's talk about the Disney Plus shows. WandaVision, I perfectly love. I think that was well constructed. Each episode was not wasted. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, yes, there was a lot of filler in that show, but it establishes the new Captain America, but I don't know if it needed to be that long of a show. But, you know, it's nice. I think it would have been better if they just made a movie, you know, another Captain America movie. That would have been better than a show, but, you know, I digress. But yeah, then you have other shows like, you know, She-Hulk and Hawkeye, and all of these other shows just didn't feel necessary at all, especially Hawkeye. I don't know why Hawkeye was a thing that needed to be established. I think they just did it just so they could say that the original 6 Avengers has his own projects that you can go watch, but like, yeah, Hawkeye was just another unnecessary one. She-Hulk is also an unnecessary one. But the only 2 shows that made you excited about the multiverse were obviously Loki and WandaVision. Those were the only 2 shows that didn't feel like fillers. Each episode had a purpose. And I honestly felt like Phase 4 should have ended with Loki. That last episode got, I mean, I don't know about everyone, but it got me excited about Kang. And it made me feel scared for the first time in the MCU. Like when Thanos was introduced, I wasn't really that scared, but that entire last episode of Loki, He Who Remains, pretty much says, hey, bro, my variants are way worse than me. You gotta be scared. Kang is scary, bro. Don't kill me, because if you kill me, there's gonna be other people out here. There's gonna be a multiverse of madness. But yeah, Phase 4 shows how Disney is just putting so much work on Marvel, and in fact, Marvel is putting so much work on the visual effects team. They gotta slow down the pace just a lot of it. And it was kind of distasteful for the MCU to make jokes about the visual effects team like what they did with She-Hulk. That was very, very distasteful. Like, I don't know why they're dissing their own team, but that's what they're doing. What I'm pretty much trying to say is that Phase 4 just feels inconsistent. And so far, I haven't been hyped about it. It just doesn't make me hype about what's about to happen, you know? Like, only Spider-Man and Loki and WandaVision, those were the only shows that got me excited about the multiverse saga. And obviously, Ant-Man 3, but that's not even Phase 4, that's Phase 5. So, yeah, there's that. Hold on, let me talk about Ant-Man real quick. They introduced Kang, the Conqueror, the main villain, in Ant-Man 3. That's like introducing Thanos for the first time as the villain in Iron Man 3. So I don't get that, because you could have saved Kang for the Avengers, kind of like how you saved Thanos for the Avengers. I don't know why they chose that, but they did. But speaking of Avengers, for a brief moment we were about to get 2 Avengers movies in the same year. If that doesn't tell you how much overload of content that Marvel is putting out, I don't know what other information I can give you, because in my opinion, they're putting out way too much content in a short amount of time. And this is becoming the Star Wars effect, where if you remember, there was a certain time where Star Wars, the brand, was putting out a movie every year, and people got sick of it real quick. And if you couldn't tell, the MCU is getting to that point. there's been so much content that, some people have been checking out. Even, I'll have to admit, even I was kind of checking out. And on top of that, we gotta consider the visual effects team and the amount of work that they are being essentially forced to do in such a short amount of time. You can see that with the visual effects in the movies and shows and stuff. They have not been that great. It gets me worried about the Ant-Man movie because I don't want the visual effects to look cheesy or crap in Ant-Man because that's an important movie. Kang's in the movie. And then when, they announced that there was gonna be, for a certain point in time, 2 Avengers movies in the same year, yeah, the visual effects the quality will definitely be affected by that. Like, even Thanos in Infinity War and Endgame looked way better than some of the visual effects that's been in Phase 4, and that's unfortunate. So overall, the main problem with the MCU is that they've been putting out way too much content, and in effect, it hasn't been consistent. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, you could tell there was a clear direction throughout, and most movies were not wasted. Whereas in Phase 4, it felt like 60% of the content that's been put out were just filler content and stuff that doesn't really matter. So what Marvel needs to do is tone it down. Put out movies and shows that are important, that are crucial. Get rid of all the filler stuff. Get rid of it. And with the fact that the DC universe is finally getting revamped, with, James Gunn being in charge, putting a direction together for the DC universe, that should give Marvel some kind of competition. Some competition makes them push harder to put out good stuff. Yeah, overall, I feel like the Phase 5 and Phase 6 of the MCU should be more focused and not just randomly putting out content and rushing stuff. Just take a step back, okay, and relax a little bit. Just relax, okay? Please treat your visual effects team with care, because they are pretty crucial to your movies. All I have to say about that.